Great, thank you very much, Ty. Thanks for providing some of that context. And as Ty mentioned, we will be posting that information along with all the presentations on our website as well. So you can find that information as well as the map if you want to play around with that to see some of the landmarks or look at the study areas Ty explained. You can do that on your own through our interactive map as well. So I'll open it up to a question and answer period. I'll ask our moderators, I guess, to read out any questions that we have coming through the chat, and I encourage anyone, if you feel comfortable, to definitely post your question in there. And if not, you can always email the corridor team as well. So I'll maybe ask our moderators, Jason and Patrick, to start us off if we have any questions.
Thanks, Ian. This is Jason Sick here. To those of you I met with a few months ago for the pre-engagement on this plan, welcome back. Sorry it couldn't be in person today. Hopefully further on this plan we can meet. The first question comes from Ellen, and it relates to the university's plans on college. So Ellen specifically mentions the college quarter plan, but there is also the university sector plan as well. So Ian, could you give some background information on how those will affect the college corridor plan, as well as just following up on what oversight or accountability will there be with what's developed on university lands?
Sure. Yeah, thanks, Jason, and thanks, Alan, for the question. Just to provide some context, as Ty mentioned, the corridor plan boundary does include a large area of university-owned lands. And so we wanted to include that because the University of Saskatchewan main campus obviously has a huge influence for the college corridor plan. When we're looking at the corridor plan, we want to ensure that that public realm component, some of those streetscaping components, even on the north side of College Drive as well, is appropriate, it's inviting, and as well we're maintaining and enhancing some of those connection points. So we didn't want that lost. As far as some of the development plans that the university has, so they have outlined that they do have development aspirations. They have outlined they have some approved plans as well. So the university sector plan, for example, provides sort of a high level framework for how some of their lands will get developed in the future. Further neighborhood level detail plans will be needed for those areas. And the corridor plan will be able to provide some further context for some of those future plans as well, and they'll need to align with some of the corridor objectives along the corridor. And that's similar for the college corridor specifically. So, that is a master plan that has been approved. And I'll just say that that is approved in regards to sort of accountability or oversight. The university is treated in the same fashion on their development lands as a private developer would be. So they do have to submit plans that get reviewed. They have to meet the guidelines of the plan, and those ultimately end up at City Council for their consideration of approval. The same way that a suburban neighborhood or a suburban concept plan would be submitted through for approval as well. So I hope that provided a clear enough answer, but we can go to any other questions, Jason?
Sure. The next question is from Dawn, and it relates to the power lines on Preston. So will the power lines on Preston Avenue be buried to reduce impact on present and future residential neighborhoods, increase traffic and BRT flow options, and create a base for future beautification of the corridor?
Yeah, I can't say one way or another. That is really some of the feedback that we're looking for, and I think you make some really good points. So obviously, I mentioned infrastructure, and some of those infrastructure upgrades will need to be looked at as part of the corridor plan, and that could include as part of some of the streetscaping, some of the utilities that we have. So obviously we need to identify those. We need to come up with a feasibility plan, and we need to come up with sort of an action plan or a costing plan. So, it's very possible that in some areas we could reroute utility lines if possible, but we want to make sure that we're making the most effective use of what we can do with our infrastructure upgrades. So, I couldn't say for sure. I definitely agree with you. It might, it might help to advance some of the beautification of the corridor, and that's something that we definitely want your feedback on. So yeah, definitely well worth it. And we'll take that feedback and that input back as well.
Thank you, Ian. This next is, it's more of a comment than a question, but it might be good if we can have someone from the project team provide a little more context to it. So it says, I'm supportive of the proposed multi-use path on College. It would be nice to see it connect to the University Bridge to Preston to accommodate bike and other types of e-cycle traffic. So I'm not too sure, Ian, if you're able to give some context to it, or perhaps Ellen Wardell, our urban design manager, might be able to speak to that as well. I'll leave that up to you, Ian.
Sure, yeah, thank you for the question. I'll just maybe mention some of the elements of the corridor plan in general regarding active transportation and connections, and then I'll let Ellen speak to anything specific if she wants to. So active transportation is definitely within the scope of this plan. As I said, it's one of one of our major deliverables is sort of how does the street function better, not only with increased density, but how does it increase, or how does it sort of work better for all modes of travel? So the corridor team, we're seeking inputs on some of those gaps and opportunities that may exist for people, whether they're walking, cycling, or they need all ages accessibility routes. So these considerations will be looked at as part of the corridor plan, and then recommendations can come out of that for upgrades or what might need to be included in part of an action plan. So just, I don't know, Ellen, if you have anything to add specifically for that question.
Yeah, nothing too specific, just to really encourage people to bring up those key connectivity points that you see within your neighborhood for active transportation. We really recognize that making those connections comfortable and accessible and easy for people will really help with an active community in this area. So thank you for that feedback. And we are planning to work really closely with the BRT and the university, as well as the active transportation group at the city of Saskatoon as part of this corridor plan to make sure that all of those active transportation networks are well coordinated.
Great, thank you, Ellen. Jason, we think we can go to the next question if there's one coming through.
Yeah, you bet. So the next question is related to land use and density. So are there plans to protect the current residential status of existing properties at the intersection of Clarence and University Drive? Is there, given your plan, any consideration to turning those properties into multiple unit residential developments? That is, as you mentioned, also a pedestrian corridor to the hospital and university, and obviously very valuable property. But we who live here are worried about the erosion of a beautiful and historic area of the city that has faced enormous pressures to change its face lately and getting squeezed from both ends of the University Drive. And just referencing some of the, development opportunities and proposals that have come forward in that area over the last few years.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's definitely one of a big concern that we've heard throughout this process. And that's really why we want to get that feedback on exactly that, some of those issues. So the corridor plan, as I said, in regards to sort of land use and densification, is expected to lay out what locations are appropriate for density, what locations could change. So this is, again, it's intended to help sort of create that certainty for developers. It's helps to create some certainty for residents. It's helped to create a city administration about where we can expect development, where can we expect the density if it's appropriate. So rather than having developments or proposals sort of pop up randomly and have to deal them on a one-off basis, this plan hopefully lays out a future plan so that we have those expectations and know where we can expect, or we can look in context and say, you know what, that is a valuable area and that is a historical area, and maybe there's some different context there for developers, or maybe it's not appropriate to add density there, or maybe there needs to be a sensitive transition. those are things that we'll have to work through throughout the process. So, and again, that's sort of to provide that context and that expectation that when a development application comes through, we can say, well, we've already examined this and we kind of know where sort of the limitations are, or where some of the context should be, or there should be some design elements that complement this, or frankly, you might have to change an aspect of your land use because it doesn't fit there, and we've decided that through the corridor plan and through extensive consultation. So that's exactly the type of feedback that we're looking for. And I'll just say that that's one of the sort of the main objectives of this corridor plan, is to look at what are the appropriate locations for that type of land use, for that type of density, and for that type of change, and what considerations do we need to make for certain sites as well.
Thank you, Ian. So the next question is just some clarification coming from Peggy. So this is related to the map showing the heritage properties that were highlighted on Ty's presentation. So are those designated properties? The Heritage Society wanted to draw everyone's attention to properties and views that are of heritage interest, not necessarily designated. I saw no mention of Elliott Street as a historic street or of Patterson Gardens.
Yeah, so thank you very much for the question, and again, thank you very much, Peggy, for the work that you and your volunteers have done over the summer to identify some of those. So as Ty mentioned, the Saskatoon Heritage Society has identified potential heritage assets, whether they're viewscapes or just important assets, or potential sense of place or placemaking opportunities. And that's in addition to sort of the baseline, and I'll maybe speak for Ty. I think what that baseline map shows is really just the registered designated heritage properties. So not to get lost too much in that, we are going to be including the Saskatoon Heritage Society inventory as part of our considerations for the corridor plan, and hopefully we'll be able to post that on our website very shortly as well, so that we can share that information with the larger group and more stakeholders as well. But yeah, you're absolutely right. There are areas in here that might have more value from a heritage point of view or a sense of place point of view that haven't directly been included on this map just yet.
Okay, the next question relates to the infrastructure upgrades you were talking about, Ian. So how will infrastructure upgrades be paid for? And they're of the intention that they should be paid for by the new development. So if you could just provide some context on where that development, those levies and the money from those developments will go to.
Sure, yeah, and I think that's a fair question, and anytime we do a plan, obviously there is opportunity for upgrades, and then there's always the question of where's the money going to come from, or where the cost, and that is really where we want to focus on that implementation or action plan. So we want to ensure, if we're recommending something or ensuring something needs to be upgraded, that that has a budgetary cost to it, and how do we fulfill that budgetary cost? So, we recognize that corridor planning's likely to identify needs probably for infrastructure upgrades or even open space enhancements. So these, as I said, will all require a funding source. So there's several connected projects underway by the city administration right now about how the city should finance growth, including specifically corridor growth as well. So the city's construction and design department is also currently working on updates to Saskatoon's overall development financing system. And in addition, the planning and development department is also examining what kind of infrastructure financing tools or development incentives that could be applied for the corridor growth area. So, some of those options I think that you speak to specifically could be examined as part of that, but we are really looking for sort of a wholesome approach, because we know that it won't just apply to the college corridor, but it will apply to all corridors as well.
Thank you, Ian. So the next question relates to the study area for the College Corridor Plan. So why does the corridor plan include part of Saskatchewan Crescent and part of University Drive, given that these are historically important residential streets?
Yes, yeah, thank you for the question. And I think it's important to clarify some of that context. So the College Corridor study boundary, it was determined, as I said, based on the bus rapid transit route. So as a general rule, an area of approximately 250 to 350 meters off the proposed corridor was determined for the boundary. So there was some adjustments made for lot and block configuration. I just want to reassure everyone that the main focus of the college corridor plan will be on the college and the Preston corridors. So through the corridor planning process, we're looking to sort of refine specific considerations for land use and where density is most appropriate. So we didn't want to lose the context from the surrounding lands. And again, we sort of just took a measurement of 250 to 350. But I do believe that, you know, we obviously want that input, and again, we'll, through the process of our land use and densification, look at what is the most appropriate areas for density and what areas or historical areas really should be sort of protected as well.
Thanks, Ian. The next question comes from Kathy. What is the proposed AAA network?
Sure, I'll maybe just let Ty field that question. I think that question probably comes just on the acronym from one of the maps.
Yeah, I can quickly clarify that, Ian. The AAA just stands for all ages and abilities. It's just intended to mean a pathway that would be comfortable for you to use whether you were 80 years old or 8 years old, no matter what your ability or skill level. So babies on skateboards, old people on scooters, that's kind of what the AAA network was meant to mean. Sorry, I should have clarified the acronym. My apologies.
Thank you, Ty. The next question comes from Ellen. As the plan is to increase densification in the core area, are there milestones or metrics that the city looks to determine the pace and scope of developments? For example, is it prudent to develop a large multi-unit complex now when the demand or need may not be evident for 5 to 10 plus years into the future? I don't believe it's a matter of build it and they will come. Should we not see the development of the transportation system before bringing in densification?
Yeah, well, thank you for that question, and that's definitely something that you know, I think we're constantly examining. As far as the corridor plan, you know, I think we're trying to prepare in advance for some of those conversations. So rather than sort of be in a position where we have a whole bunch of applications or a whole bunch of demand and we don't have a plan ready for that densification. So it really is trying to set that framework and set that stage so that we are ready. So even if development doesn't occur, as you say, and it might not in the next couple of years, we want to make sure that we have the groundwork laid for that, and so that the developers have those expectations rather than sort of, again, dealing with applications sort of randomly as they come in. We know sort of what the conditions are of the college plan. We know where to expect densification, and that's all sort of laid out in a plan in a strategic way.
Thanks, Ian. The next question comes from Anna. I was wondering if the corridor plan will consider vegetation. Mental health is an issue in Canada, and it's well known that vegetation, even during winter, can improve mental health. Vegetation, hopefully native and edible, will make a huge difference for all people walking, biking, and driving through the corridor, and for those living and working around. I wish we take this opportunity to green the city, starting with the corridors, as this should be included in every planning project.
Yes, I think that's you know, absolutely vital, and I think that's an important comment. And you know, I think Ellen Wardell is probably the best to sort of comment on this as our urban design expert, and who will be dealing with the public realm. So I'll maybe let Ellen field that question.
Thanks, Ian. Yeah, that's a great question, Anna. Vegetation will be a huge part of the consideration in our toolkit for how we look at improving the public realm in these areas and in our considerations for streets as well as for parks and open spaces. So, and your considerations about native species and edible landscapes are all important. We will be looking into that both with the community's needs as well as with some of the other roles that vegetation can play in terms of providing infrastructure services like stormwater retention, those kind of items. As we go through this process, as well as working with our parks department to make sure that we can maintain them well, because I know that it can be a frustration when there's vegetation that isn't able to be maintained by the city and then can become an issue. So all of those considerations will be part of the long-term planning for this project and will be a key part of how we keep this neighborhood as beautiful as it is and keep making it better.
Thank you, Ellen. The next question comes from Holly-Ann. So already there is concern by residents on the north side of Elliott, whose yards are subject to viewing by higher structures on College. What consideration is given to existing residents and their loss of privacy?
Yeah, I think that's a very important point and something that we do want to consider when we're looking at sort of the overall land use strategy. We do have, I'll mention another one of our projects as part of this is developing zoning districts, those are currently under development, those are targeted specifically for development desired for the corridor. So these will include provisions for a variety of housing forms, but the districts will also include provisions to ensure that we have a sensitive transition from higher density development that might happen on the corridor to some of those, as you said, on Elliott Street, or some of those single family homes in adjacent neighborhoods. So I think the view is important, sort of the viewscape, as well as some of the impacts that a development would have. So that is on the forefront of when we're looking at developing new zoning districts and how we apply land use, is what's the appropriate transition. And we'll probably be getting some feedback on that as well through the process of land use through one of our workshops, is what can we do to sort of ensure that transition is sensitive and it's respectful to those existing properties.
The next question deals with housing. So how will land use and appropriate sustainable space be kept for future public housing inclusion needs?
Sure, yes. Thank you for the question. So the corridor plan objective is to create opportunities for increased housing, and that includes all types of housing forms. So that includes student housing or senior housing, affordable housing, rental housing, or even accessible housing as well. So, while market demand is, largely a driver of the housing stock, the corridor team again is examining what provisions can be made to ensure that a variety of housing forms can be enabled, either through land use conditions or either through corridor zoning districts as well. And I think that this plan will help to try to, to move that forward. Once you have a plan and once you have some policy around that, it sort of reinforces that desire, or sort of reinforces that policy.
Thank you. The next two questions come from Dawn. So one is, what ideas are being considered for how students will safely and efficiently cross College Drive? And the other is concerning how buses will load and offload passengers, which lanes will the buses use?
Sure. So, I think the best person to answer this, we have Rob Dudiak, who is the Bus Rapid Transit Project Manager. So I'll just ask Rob if he's able to provide any context for that question.
Yeah, thanks, Ian. My name's Rob Dudiak. I'm the project manager for the city's Bus Rapid Transit project. And thank you to everyone for being present, and thanks for the questions, Dawn. The buses will be using the center lanes along College Drive as part of the BRT system, and then loading and unloading from center stations or platforms. I hope that answered your questions. As to the ideas as far as students crossing safely and efficiently across College Drive, The number of crossings, as far as the BRT project is concerned, is the same before and after the BRT is built. Though I know from some of our discussions with the university that their long-term plans include a skywalk between a proposed building by the PAC building over to the parking structure, which then can coordinate with the planned BRT station at Cumberland and College. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you, Rob. The next question relates to public green space. So the question is, you already mentioned that there's very little public green space other than the space along the river in Cosmopolitan Park, which is very heavily used by resident neighbors and individuals from other parts of Saskatoon. What are your plans regarding increasing outdoor recreational green space in this corridor? Access to green spaces and nature has been widely recognized as an important element which contributes to the well-being and health of the population which lives there and has access to these spaces.
I can jump in and take that one here. Thank you so much. We're not going to pretend that this one isn't a challenging one. Creating new green space within any existing neighborhood is very difficult in any context, but we are very keenly aware of the need for positive green space or positive access to green space for residents here, especially with increasing density. So we're going to be exploring with residents, we're trying to dig into what the real needs are for recreation green space. How can we meet them maybe in unconventional ways, different ways from what you would necessarily see in other opportunities or in other neighborhoods where you're starting from scratch, as well as looking to enhance existing green spaces to better meet needs and then go from there. It's going to be a challenge, but one that we're really interested in hearing the creative ideas that people within the neighborhood have for how we can better meet those needs and how we can partner with our major stakeholders like the university, who maybe have a little bit more room to maneuver to provide some of that recreation space possibly. So we don't have any answers at this point. We want to hear your needs, your concerns, and we will put those together and start looking for solutions.
Thank you, Ellen. The next question from Kyle, this might pertain to you, Rob, as part of the BRT work, but are there any plans to redesign the intersection of College Drive, University Bridge, Sask Crescent, and Clarence Avenue? Any plans for time-specific directional lanes along the University Bridge?
I certainly can't answer to time directional use of the University Bridge. I know that the bridge manager would be mad at me if I made any comments. As to the intersection of College Drive, University Bridge, Sask Crescent, and Clarence Avenue, the BRT project has a little bit of change to that intersection, but not in a way that I think most people would see as substantial. It's widened slightly to the north onto university property just to allow for all of the lane width that's needed. I hope that answers. Thanks.
Thanks, Rob. And Kyle, if you still have follow-up questions on that, please let us know. And if we need to talk to another individual at the city or department, we're happy to do that as well. So the next question, we appreciate that your immediate concern is with developing the Preston and College Drive areas, but our residence is included on the small area to the west of Clarence in the College Corridor Plan. What is the worst case scenario for us? Selfishly, and I'm guessing on behalf of my neighbors, could I have a multi-unit residential unit or tower built in the College Corridor next to my home? I'm not asking if it will, I'm asking if it could, given your plan, even in the future. Rick and Karen.
Sure, thank you for the question, and I apologize, I had some technical difficulties, so my video doesn't seem to be working anymore, so I apologize for that. Yeah, again, I think that really comes down to some of the land use conversations that we're having. Definitely the end goal is not to have densification absolutely everywhere just for the sake of having densification. It really is what is the most appropriate place, and how can we make college increase in density, but also function better and improve better. And that includes for all area residents as well. So as I said, really the focus is on that College Drive and Preston Avenue. And it really is sort of defining what is appropriate for College Drive, what is appropriate for Preston Avenue. And that's the same question that will be asked probably in other corridor segments as well. And they might have a very different context. You know, for example, 22nd Street and 8th Street and College are all, widely different and have different unique considerations. They have, different senses of place and they function differently as well. So, I don't know if I could give you a sort of worst case or best case scenario. It's really trying to come up with the best scenario sort of wholesomely for College Drive to improve it. And again, the end goal is not just to add densification for the pure sake of adding densification, but really trying to plan that strategically while adding some densification.
Okay, the next question comes from a Varsity View resident. When you refer to increased density, does this mean rezoning to allow developers to fill this historic neighborhood with apartments? How does this benefit the residents of the area?
Yeah, so certainly when we talk about density, that could include rezoning certain areas. If that's necessary or needed, I guess a developer could undertake a rezoning process. Again, I'll just say the focus of the density or the conversation around land use really does focus on College Drive and Preston Avenue as the corridors, as well as our zoning districts are really trying to provide some of those provisions that allow for some of those sensitive transitions. So, we want to maintain and we know that the neighborhood and particularly Varsity View is sort of the building blocks of our city, and they all have sort of value and importance in that. So some of the objectives of filling in density, again, I think if we do that and create expectations and there's some considerations made through consultation with the neighborhood, it'll create more of that expectation so that we're not necessarily, again, just having a developer randomly come in and say, I want to put a big tower right in the middle of a neighborhood surrounded by single family homes. Well, that might not be appropriate through the College Corridor Plan. We've sort of identified what areas should be protected for that type of density level and what areas may be appropriate for other density levels. I think we have one more question in the queue, so maybe we can respond to that and then we can wrap up.
Ian, I'm not seeing any more questions on my end here. I might have missed it. Oh,
okay, no, maybe I was reading that wrong. So yes, thank you very much. That was those were all excellent questions and definitely a lot of challenges, definitely a lot of opportunities, and we're definitely looking forward to getting more interactive feedback through some of our workshops on some of those issues. So just a few closing notes. I just want to let you know that there is a recording of this event that will be posted on our corridor website. And again, that's at saskatoon.ca/corridor. A reminder about the survey, which again can be accessed through our website. We're looking forward to receiving your feedback on what challenges and opportunities there are for the College Corridor Plan. I'll just ask that, if you do have any unanswered questions on the chat, our team will be available for a few more minutes just on the chat itself, not online. But if you do have further questions, feel free to visit our website or contact myself directly. And also just keep watching that chat because we'll try to respond directly in the chat for those. Just again, a reminder, the website really is that best place to keep up to date for anything related to the plan. You can sign up on the website for the e-newsletter, which will provide information for future opportunities and events to participate in the College Corridor Plan. And we'll also be having some interactive workshops related to land use and density coming up soon. So please watch for those notifications. Sorry,
while you were talking, a few more questions came in. If you're able to answer some of them, I can go through them.
Yeah, yeah, that's definitely fine. We can address those two or those couple other ones. Yeah.
Sure. So from Dawn, city policies have been a disappointment in some Varsity View infill properties. I think despite the Varsity View neighborhood plan recommending that infills meet or exceed architectural standards, might we improve this concern for our homeowner residents as the corridor plan develops? Owner residents will usually be happier if the city helps us exceed expectations.
Yes, I think absolutely. That's exactly what we sort of intend to try to achieve with the corridor plan, is to have that feedback and again identify where some of that land use and density and where appropriate policy is necessary. So, you know, it's definitely something that we've heard throughout this process and some of the impetus for this corridor planning as well. Like I said, it's not just to add densification for the sake of adding densification or adding infill for the sake of adding infill. We want to make sure that we're doing that strategically, and we want to make sure that we're doing that in a way that can benefit the corridor and can benefit the existing neighborhoods that surround that corridor as well.
Thanks, Ian. The next question comes from Kathy. So what is the status of the proposed development in the southeast corner at the intersection of College and Clarence, and how many residents would be added due to this development?
Yeah, that's a good question, Kathy, and I don't have the exact details on that or available at this time. So I definitely will touch base with our development review section that handles some of those applications, and I can provide you a status update as well as sort of the amount of units that may be proposed for that development.
Okay, and the next question, Ian, relates to the city's communications. So we've attended and given feedback at every stage of other public sessions concerning developments in our neighborhood. We've been disappointed with the lack of communication after decisions were made about how our concerns were addressed and what's the process for letting us know how our concerns were addressed.
Yeah, thank you very much for making that point. That I think through this process, that's also something that we have heard, and we've heard through our preliminary engagement that we need to constantly be striving to be more transparent about what decisions have been made. So there frankly have been some decisions made about the corridor planning program. And as I said, you know, some of those objectives like land use and density and public realm, we want to be sure that we incorporate. Sorry, pardon me, I'm just having a glitch on my computer. Sorry, we want to make sure that we incorporate you know, all that feedback, and we also want to make sure that we're clear and transparent through this process of what input we're looking for and how that can influence the project. And we want to be clear about what decisions have been made as well. So it's definitely something that we're always trying to improve our transparency, and it's definitely something we've heard as well, and something that we are striving towards through this process. And I'm sure that we'll have to constantly be reminding ourselves about that as well, about what kind of input. As far as sort of the communication on how decisions were made or how concerns were addressed or any feedback, we are putting in a reporting system so that we can report all that feedback that we receive through the survey or even through tonight's meeting as well through our website. So all that information will be streamlined through saskatoon.ca/corridor.
Okay, a new one came in from Anna, Ian. Just hope that adding urban greenery and biodiversity is not in the long term. It is too far from now, and climate change, mental health, and food security are urgent. So more just, I guess, a comment on the timelines for adding that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that is going to be an important aspect when we start to look at our implementation and action plan. Obviously, once we finish the corridor plan in the next year, it doesn't necessarily all get implemented at once, or it doesn't sort of, all the action items can't be done at once, but it'll be important to try to identify some prioritization of what is more urgent than others as part of that action plan, and really determining some of those hard deadlines to make sure that we are prioritizing some of those things that have more of an urgent need.
Thanks, Ian. As of right now, I don't see any other questions in the chat.
Okay, well, I think we're a little over time. We tried to say we would get you out of here by 8, so we do appreciate all the good questions. If you do have more questions, again, we encourage you to reach out to our core team, and we also are looking for your feedback in that survey as well that we'll be reporting back on. And again, please watch our website for some of those notifications of when our interactive workshops will be coming soon. And I really just wanted to take another opportunity to thank everyone for your interest in the College Corridor Plan. I know myself, our counselors, and the corridor planning team really appreciates the time you took this evening, even if it was just to participate and listen virtually. But we do appreciate it, and we do appreciate your voices. So we look forward to more interactive sessions in the near future. So please stay safe, have a good evening, and thank you again.